In this video, we're going to be using our calculator to make a scatter plot, to do one variable statistics, and to draw a function over the top of that scatter plot. Alright, we will first go to one new document, then 4 lists and spreadsheets. Now we will enter in this data. My X column is my distance from the wall. And my Y column are these apparent lengths that we measured. Okay, and I'm going to come up to the headings and label these accordingly. So A is my distance. And column B, our output, the dependent variable, is our apparent length. Okay. Once we get our data in here, we want to now do the graphing. We can hit Control I for insert or Control Doc. It says add a page there. Control Doc. Now I'm going to go to 5, Add Data and Statistics. Here is our graph. I will click and put the variables appropriately. Our independent, the X, is our distance from the wall. Our dependent, our Y, is the apparent length. Alright, and here you see our inverse variation. It's not linear, it's definitely a curve, but it's not a parabola either. Alright, as our distance increases, our length decreases. That's one key feature of the inverse variation. One of them increases, the other decreases. Okay, now what we want to investigate now is a third column. I want to look at the product of X times Y. Alright, I'm going to just call this X times Y. We're calling the distance X and the apparent length Y, and I want to look at these products. We know in our inverse variation is of the form X times Y equals some constant K. Now this is real world data. We don't expect for this K to be exactly the same, but we hope that it's in the ballpark. Here's how we can find that. Alright. I'm going to go back to my previous sheet, so Control left arrow, and now I'm back on my data, and I can go into the C column, and I want to define the C column as simply A times B. So A times B. This is much like an Excel spreadsheet, and when I hit enter, it's going to find all those products. 8 times 10 is 80. 12 times 7 is 84. 16 times 5 is 80. 20 times 4 is 80. Here we have a 72, and lastly a 78.4, and then an 80 point something. So you can see while all my numbers aren't exactly 80, they are relatively close. Alright. I don't have to fill in that column. I have it right here. On your sheet, you should fill in this X times Y column. Now, I'm going to find the average of these. That is, I'm finding an average K. Here's how I do that. Menu. First menu. Then 4 statistics. 4. Then stat calculations. 1. Then 1 variable statistics. 1. Number of lists, we're just going to do 1 list. And the list we're interested in is list C. We're going to find the average K. Frequency we leave as the default, and the result will go in the D column. That's fine. We don't want to overwrite the A or B columns. And I hit OK. Now, it's going to tell us a lot of things. I'm going to see if I can explain some of them. That little sideways looking E character is sigma. It means sum of the X's. If we added up all that C column, it would be 554. This is the sum of them squared. This little tiny s is the standard deviation. N is the number of numbers, 7. If we scroll to the bottom, we're going to find what's called the 5-number summary. The minimum, the maximum, the median, and the quartiles. All right. But what we're interested in is the very top element here. It says X bar. That is the sample mean. It's 79.2. You want to find what your X bar is. All right. So I'm going to call this thing K. All right. So for us, what we're really finding is K bar. That is our mean. For me, it was 79.2. So instead of xy equals K, I'm going to have xy equals 79.2. Well, I want to graph this function, so I need to solve for y. Solving for y, I will divide by x on both sides. X is divided and leaves y equals 79.2 over x. This is the function I will graph over my scatter plot, and it should model my points relatively well. All right, lastly, I will go back to my scatter plot. Control right arrow. Now I want to graph this function over the top of my points. I go menu, 4 for analyze. Previously we've done regression. We're not going to do a regression here. We're simply going to plot function. We have a function to draw. We don't need to find one. 4 is plot function. It says f of x. We know that's one way to state our dependent variable. All right, it's just like y. 79.2 divide x. 79.2 divide by x. And this should draw pretty nicely through my points there. There you see it. Now all the points aren't exactly on the line. This one's a little bit below, that one's a little bit above, but real world data will very rarely be like this. In fact, I fabricated this data to get it to be really close, so it's doubtful that your points are going to be it's doubtful that your points will look quite as nice as mine, but they might be. All right, that sums up our process for this activity.